Thank you for coming to my office this afternoon. I've been in this office for 23 and a half years, and I don't think it's ever been as popular as it has been today, so that includes having all of you. Let me just say a few words, and then I'll be happy to answer some of your questions. Obviously, this was an unusual day, but I think it's most important for us at Microsoft to continue to be clear about a few principles that we are committed to pursuing. First, we're committed to ensuring that our human rights principles and our contractual terms of service are upheld in the Middle East. It was about 3 weeks ago that The Guardian reported a specific allegation regarding the use of Azure by the Israeli military. About 2 weeks ago, we launched a formal investigation. We have a world-class team. We are working every day to get to the bottom of what is going on, and we will. And we will uphold our human rights principles and our terms of service. Second, this company was built and stands today on a culture of trust with our employees, of open dialogue with our employees, and that matters deeply. We have thousands of employees in Israel that we trust. We have thousands of employees across the Middle East and North Africa who we trust. We have thousands of employees of every nationality here in Redmond who we trust. And we value their feedback. And as you can imagine, we're getting no small measure of feedback from the group that's called Jews at Microsoft, from the group that's called Palestinian Allies at Microsoft, from our group of employees across the Middle East and North Africa. They offer suggestions and we're considering them. When they send us ideas, we think about them. I read what they say, we meet with them, and we will sustain that kind of dialogue. It is literally the lifeblood of this company. And then third, we need to keep our workplace safe and secure. We need to keep our employees secure while we honor the freedom of expression that is a hallmark of this country and American life. But obviously, when 7 folks do as they did today, storm a building, occupy an office, lock other people out of the office, plant listening devices even in crude form in the form of telephones, cell phones hidden under couches and behind books, that's not okay. When they're asked to leave and they refuse, that's not okay. That's why, for those 7 folks, the Redmond police literally had to take them out of the building. 2 of those 7, only 2 of those 7, are Microsoft employees. One is a former Google employee. I think it's the closest a Google employee has ever gotten to my office in the 23 years I've been here. So we've had to act, and we have and we will. And yet at the same time, I want to be clear, we respect the freedom of expression that everyone in this country enjoys as long as they do it lawfully. And in other instances where people have, we've honored that as well. So in closing, I just want to say, look, Microsoft is not a government, it's not a country, it's a company. There are many things that we can't do to change the world, but we will do what we can and what we should. And that starts with ensuring that our human rights principles and contractual terms of service are upheld everywhere by all of our customers around the world. And we're focused on doing that today, tomorrow, and in short order, as quickly as we can, including in the Middle East. So be happy to answer questions.
Thanks, folks. I appreciate you may have questions. If you do, just kindly raise your hand. If you can state your name and the outlet that you work with and limit yourself to a single question.
Sure. I'm Jeremy Harris with Como 4 News. Do you know how they were able to get in? This is a very secure area. Is it clear how they were able to breach this far into the building?
We have security footage, and we're looking at that, Jeremy. I would say this. The building was designed in 2002 with a certain level of security that has stood the test of time for 23 years until today. We did get a report yesterday afternoon from an employee that someone from the activist group No Azure for Apartheid was calling around and seeking a floor plan of this floor. So obviously, one way or another, they figured out how to get in. We'll adapt our security accordingly. We obviously need to keep our facilities safe and secure.
Megan Boynton with the Seattle Times. Mr. Smith, talking to some of these protesters, they say that Microsoft is retaliating against current employees. What's your response to that?
What I want to say is we have clear lines. If employees want to express their opinion, there's always places and ways to do that. They can share expressions of views with employees on our internal communication services. They can send petitions, and they do. And in fact, we read those petitions. We think about what people say. Anybody in this company can send anyone else. They can send to me, they can send to Satya, they can send to others an email. And we actually read those emails. We don't retaliate against people for that. People can go protest in public spaces, whether it's at the Redmond Transit Center or in a kayak on a public lake outside my house. We don't retaliate for that. But if people engage in vandalism, if they violate repeatedly our email policies, if they storm buildings, if they occupy offices, if they create threats to others, that's different. And I don't think that is a profound principle. That's just common sense.
Sir, at the beginning, you raised the Guardian's accusation or story,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And have you seen? Do you think that there's substance to what the article says?
Well, what I would say is this: we're looking into what the Guardian reported, and yeah, I have to say I think the Guardian did a fair job in its reporting on August 6th. They talked with some of our communications folks and gave us an opportunity to learn and address some of what they said. And from my perspective, some of what they had heard turned out to be false, and we were able to address that. Some of what they heard turned out to be true, and much of what they reported now needs to be tested. And so I think their responsible step from us is clear. In this kind of situation, to go investigate and get to the truth of how our services are being used. I will say this, because I think the Guardian in one of its stories questioned our employees in Israel. We trust our employees in Israel. They are loyal Microsoft employees and have seen no evidence to date that anyone among our employees sought to deceive anyone. And of course, if we were to learn something different, whether it's there or anywhere in the world, that would be a different story. But the reality is, we have an important assignment that we took away from that report, and we are pursuing it.
Question in the back.
Yeah, Jim Nelson with King 5. As of today, what is Microsoft's relationship with the Israeli government and military? Things that I'm sure you've been reviewing over the last several weeks.
I would say two things. The vast majority of what Microsoft does for the Israeli military, the Israeli Defense Force, is protect the cybersecurity of the state of Israel. Yeah, and that reflects the focus of our research and development center, really product development center in Israel. It's a world-leading facility for the development of cybersecurity. And that is something that we do not only with the state of Israel and the Israeli military, but it's actually done in coordination with other governments and countries in the Middle East. The collaboration between Israel and other countries like the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, under the Abraham Accords, I think is of profound importance for protecting the entire Middle East, especially from Iran and Russia and cyber threats. That is our primary focus. There are some other activities as well that involve the use of Azure for storage, for example, for processing of data. And that is what we are focused on getting to the bottom of. There are uses that are permissible, there are uses that are not. And I think it is incumbent upon us as a company, whether we're talking about Israel or anywhere in the world, and especially anywhere in the world where there's a conflict, to make sure that the lines that we have set are respected.
Yeah, you mentioned three things that folks had been doing to violate policies. One was vandalism, which we understand, and there was another, but you also said violation of email policies. So what have folks been doing that have been a violation of email policy? Have they been organizing through Microsoft email?
No. Basically, we have a simple rule about using email for business purposes and mass mailings of email. And in a few cases, we have had employees that have sent emails with non-business topics with their political views to large numbers of employees. And the first thing we've done, and I think it's the right thing to do, is not to walk into somebody's office and fire them, but to sit down with somebody so that they understand the rules that we have. And if somebody repeats that violation, then it's a different situation. But that's very different, in my view, from, say, someone who storms a building, occupies an office, or damages property and the like.
And that follow-up question, the two people that were Microsoft employees, are they facing any disciplinary measures internally because of today?
Well, we'll take a look. I think one or two of them may have also been arrested last week. So, if somebody's been arrested twice, that's a situation that is not standard employee conduct, I think it's fair to say. And I don't think it would be regarded as standard employee conduct by any of the places where you work, frankly, any of the places where anybody works.
Todd, I'll give you the last question and then.
Todd Bishop from eQuire. Brad, one of the complaints of the group No Azure for Apartheid from earlier, prior to that recent escalation of their protests, was that Microsoft executives did not sit down with them and have a conversation. Is that something that you regret not doing? And even after these latest incidents, would you ever consider doing that in the future?
Well, the first thing I would say is we sit down frequently with our employee groups. And that includes the PAMs, the Palestinian allies at Microsoft. It includes representatives of MENA, Microsoft in the Middle East and North Africa. So we do sit down with those employee groups. Look, last week, the folks that were arrested were mostly from outside this company. 20 people were arrested, 16 have never worked at Microsoft. So that's a different kind of organization. And I just have to say, that kind of conduct is both, in my view, not necessary in order to get us to pay attention, but more importantly, perhaps, it distracts from the real dialogue that we must sustain with the different employee groups of multiple backgrounds, faiths, cultural attributes, nationalities, and the like. And I would just say one other thing, because I know it's been in the news today. There was a report in Bloomberg that one of our security folks had contacted somebody at the FBI, and that was a Bloomberg headline. That's something I first heard about actually last Thursday when I was sitting down to talk with Bloomberg. And having looked at it since, one of our security folks in April sent an email to the local FBI office inquiring as to whether they had any information about disruptions that they could foresee being planned here in Seattle. That's what it was about. And I then would just zoom out and end where I began. We need to uphold our human rights standards, and we will. We need to sustain the dialogue with our employees, and we are committed to doing that. It's essential that we maintain the security and safety of our campus and our facilities. We'll do that as well. And I think it's fair and it's appropriate at the end of the day to reflect on the fact that sometimes people look at a big company and they think it's some anonymous creation or creature. In fact, everybody who works here is a person. And we all care deeply about what has been going on in the Middle East. We care deeply about the 1,139 people who died as a result of a terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th, 2023, the 36 children who were killed, the 251 hostages that were taken, including the 50 that have yet to be released. And we care deeply about the 61,000 civilians, for the most part, in Gaza who have died since October the 8th, the 17,000 children who have died in Gaza, the hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza today that are facing extraordinarily severe risks of famine and food insecurity. We cannot do everything that we might wish to change the world, but we know our role. We're here to provide technology in a principled and ethical way. And I want everyone to know that's our job. We'll do our job well, just as we will continue to do our broader job well of providing technology for customers around the world. So on that note, thank you very
Is this
much.
the office that was occupied?
This is the office,
This is
yes.
the office.
Was it
Okay.
vandalized?
It's been cleaned up, let me just leave it at that. Okay,
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, thank you all for coming.
Okay.